Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. Today our episode is Investor Rehab Talk.
Welcome to the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast with Scott Whitwam, your blueprint to financial abundance. Settle in as we explore the mindset and methods for wealth building through real estate.
Welcome back. I'm Scott Whitwam, and we'll be talking about investor rehab today. First, I'd like to start with a couple, differentiations. The difference between a lipstick rehab and a deep dive rehab. A lot of investors all over the country, doesn't matter where it is, they focus pretty heavily on what I would call lipstick rehabs. You know, the old saying, you can put lipstick on a pig, but it's still a pig. And these kind of rehabs are definitely identifiable. Let me give you just some examples. I had a client and we're looking in the $1 million range on real estate. And we're out looking at this property. And my client is going, well, yeah, I like this about it. And I like this about it. And I go, so I stopped him and I said, look, I want you to take a look at what this rehabber did on this property. And so I went and I showed them the light switches. And you could tell that the light switches were dirty. So which means what? It means that they weren't replaced. So you're having a $1 million house. They did a rehab on it, but didn't take the time. What is it? Let's just say there's 50 light switches in a house. And even if the light switches cost $10 a piece, if you're buying really high-end rockers, I mean, most light switches, our construction company buys them in bulk, and they're a couple bucks at most. But let's just say they would have had to invest another $500 on light switches. The difference in the look, in the finish of this property would have been so much better. Because once I showed them what to look for just in the light switch things, they started noticing that every room, some people had taken some time, it looked like, to try to clean. But how hard is it? I mean, it doesn't take that much time to replace outlets. You're painting the house. You're going to have all the covers off of the light switches anyways. And a lot of times what'll happen is when people go in and do these lipstick rehabs, they'll replace switch and outlet covers, because they're just pennies a piece, because they have to have the covers off anyways in order to paint the house so that it looks right. I mean, we've seen them where they don't do that either. They just tape around them. When you get done, you've got dark lines around the outside of the outlet covers. But if you're going to have the covers off to paint the house anyways, the walls anyways, why not just go ahead and replace the switches? You're right there. It's not that difficult of a job. So that's one thing. The other thing we get a lot is with installing flooring. And maybe this has become a pet peeve of mine, and it's not really big, but I look at this as being somebody who didn't take the time. This is somebody who was just trying to get this done quick, really didn't care what the consumer, the person coming behind, was going to get, and that's what I call a lipstick. They're just covering something up. So you'll have, we'll say 3-inch baseboard in a house, and you'll have a flooring material that is sitting under the baseboard. The baseboard is sitting on top of it. Doesn't matter whether it's carpet, doesn't matter whether it's tile, whatever it is. Well, somebody will come along and say, hey, let's put new flooring in here, but we don't want to spend the money to do, to take all of the existing flooring up. So we're just going to put the new flooring, the tile, the LVP, the whatever, over the existing flooring surface. And we're not going to remove the baseboard. And so now what you have is, instead of 3-inch baseboard, maybe you have 2.5-inch baseboard, and it's behind the flooring material instead of up where it's supposed to be on top of the flooring material. Your baseboard is shorter, which actually is a dynamic in the room. If you've ever walked into a house that's got 4, 5, or 7-inch baseboard, it really makes the room look different. It really breaks up the wall and creates a more comfortable space. It feels bigger inside. But now all of a sudden you've got shorter baseboard. It's not installed properly. It's just not done right. And it doesn't take that much time. I mean, you got to run a razor blade across the top of the baseboard, and you got to pull it apart with flat pry bars. Generally, I mean, if you really work hard on it, you can actually save the existing baseboard in there, whether it's wood or whether it's MDF. If you're careful with it, you can save the baseboard. You can reinstall it properly on top of your flooring material. First off, you should be taking all the baseboard out of the house if you want to do a quality remodel on these properties. Anyways, I find that we get more money for our quality remodels. Our houses sell quicker. They look better than these lipsticks. And then we take the underlying flooring. We had a house one time. This is absolutely incredible. So we had a house that not only did they go over the existing flooring, so the very bottom flooring in the kitchen was linoleum. They had put a layer of tile over the linoleum, and then they laid another layer of tile over that tile. So when we're running the flooring removers, the tile would come out like tile is supposed to, but guess what happens when you get under that second layer of tile? Your tile remover grabs the linoleum, which is rubber, and it stops you. Oh, that was a brutal removal of it. But it also, when we got done, it gave us a much more quality look. The floors looked so much better. We got the tile back down on the floor, got baseboards sitting on top of the tile. And when we installed new cabinets, it actually looked right. I mean, it was kind of weird because your kick plates were much smaller in this kitchen than normal. Well, you had 2 layers of tile on top of linoleum. You lost probably close to an inch of height in the kitchen because somebody thought, hey, we'll just throw this over it. The new buyer will never know these, and they probably won't for a considerable period of time. And you can be off, in Hawaii, enjoying yourself while they're having to deal with now flooring issues or other issues in the house because it didn't get done right. Not everybody wants to take time to do quality, but let's think about the reason why we call them lipstick is because literally you're just covering up something that currently exists, just like on your lips. You're just putting it over the top of something that already exists instead of doing it right. So let's talk about deep dive, remodel work. Deep dive is quality work. This is where you go out, you take out the existing flooring, you get to a solid substrate, whether it's wood, whether it's a slab concrete floor, and you lay your new flooring on top of it. So if you have hardwood, generally if you have hardwood, which you see a lot in the Northeast and in the Northwest, where they've got local hardwoods that they tongue and groove and they install for flooring, a lot of those can be refinished. They are sitting on the substrate. They can be sanded down. They can be refinished. They can look really, really nice. What really gets me is when you take beautiful, oak or fir or cedar floors that are all tongue and groove, and then somebody comes in and goes, oh, I don't want to refinish them, and they throw carpet over them, or they throw LVP over them, or they throw another layer of laminate flooring or something over the top of them. And so you're going to take that out, and then you find great floors underneath, but they're damaged now because somebody put something over it, they glued on top of it. It takes a lot more work. But really a deep dive would be to make this thing right for the buyer, whoever's going to acquire this property. My wife and I have a little bit different approach to this. So when we're rehabbing, when we're flipping a home, I treat it just like I would with something for a construction company. If I'm coming into your house to remodel, a master closet or do a whole home remodel, whatever it is, we're going to do this with quality because you're going to go, well, yeah, that's the way I want it. I want this, 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 and this, and we're going to make it right. I want to remodel my flip houses so that if everything else in the world went away and I had to move into that house, I would be comfortable living in that house, and I would know that my wife would be comfortable living in that house. So when we go in, we do a deep dive. We replace all the switches. We replace all of the outlets. We replace all of the ceiling fans. Generally, we're replacing all the lights because a lot of the stuff with the old incandescent, we're replacing with LED. It's brighter, it's color tone. We can do color selection. There's a lot more things we can do. It draws less electricity. We're doing all new baseboard. We're doing new casing. Often we'll do all new doors throughout a house, depending. But sometimes we go into a house and it's got solid core doors, and we may just refinish those. We may run a low grit sandpaper across them, scuff them, have the painter come in, seal them, and paint them, because there's nothing wrong with them. They're quality wood doors. Same thing with front doors. There's been times I've seen people like, let's take this old door out of here and throw this fiberglass door in. Well, if you had taken some time and cleaned up that solid wood door that was probably 5 times more expensive than the fiberglass door you sent in there, it would have added a quality piece to your rehab and flip, and and created a better final product for the consumer. So we try to go in and we try to actually deep dive and look at what would we want done if we were buying this house. If I'm coming to this house and it looks remodeled, it looks fresh, what do I not want to have to deal with? So let me give you an example. One time I had a client, an investor client, that we'd taken this, I think this was in downtown Phoenix, taken a look at this house and it looked really nice. And so we wrote an offer on it. They got under contract on it. They brought their home inspector in it. And the home inspector noticed that there was some condition on the backside of the bathroom. And so come to find out, this flipper had just put new sheetrock over rotten, termite-infested, water-soaked wood throughout the entire bathroom where the showers and tubs were. And before we could close on this, because we found it, good thing we found it, before we closed on this, we made them actually open it up, replace all of the wood, fix everything correctly for my client, and get it right. Well, how much easier would it have been for the person remodeling that house just to have said, hey, this wood is bad, let's just replace it. Let's take it out. Let's put in new sills. Maybe maybe we need to put in some new studs. Maybe the top plate's been eaten by termites, whatever, and just fix it right, so that when a consumer, when a buyer comes in and buys this house, they can do their inspections, and you have the confidence. You don't have to worry about anything. You've done everything. It's going to be a great product for the house. They're going to be able to buy it. They're not going to experience problems at the end of the day. I can tell you that from the rental houses that I have too, that we typically fix things. I found out that it's better to spend a little bit more money up front, fix things, versus going, we'll just cover that up. It'll be fine for a couple of years. Because a couple of years from now, the tenants start calling. Hey, you got this problem, you got that problem, you got this problem. And, we had one of our rental properties not too long ago that we went through, and we had redone the laundry area, and somehow a rodent got up in it and actually chewed through one of the PEX hot water supply lines, created a leak. So we had to open the wall back up and get in there and fix it. But the nice thing was, because everything was fairly new within a couple of years, I think 3 years since we replumbed that whole thing, it was actually a pretty quick fix. It took more time to get the siding off the house, because we did the repair from the outside. It took more time to get the siding off the house and get the siding back in with the tongue and groove, caulks, and all that stuff to seal it back up. But because everything else on the inside of this thing, when the water leak happened, the lumber was still all good and solid. We were able to dry it all out. We put some new insulation in it because we didn't want to put the insulation that had been water soaked back in it. But because we had done a quality remodel on this rental house, even when there was a problem, when something like that happens and there was a problem, we were able to get in and resolve the issue pretty quickly. So I think deep dives on our remodels, when we're talking about remodeling homes for consumers that we're going to sell, why not give them a quality product and just build it into your price? People typically pay for quality. Quality matters for our communities. That'd be the second thing I'd say, is there's a reason for doing this. I know myself and many of the investors that are in, the networks that I hang in are in this to really help people. They're trying to make our communities better. They're trying to create more good and affordable housing for people. I know not everybody's there. Some people are, all they're trying to do is make a quick buck. They don't care about the person that buys the house, buyer beware, all those kind of things. But there's a reason why we use licensed contractors on the work that we do, not just because the state says we have to, but because we typically get people who pay a little bit more attention to quality. We, again, want to make sure that people have homes that they can live in and that they don't have to. I mean, there's nothing like buying. I think about this. There's nothing like buying a house. You're a first-time home buyer. You saved up just enough money for your down payment and your closing costs, and you get closed. You move into your house, and a week in, you find an issue, whether it's a sewer line collapse, whether it's a hot water heater that goes out, whether it's an air conditioner that fails. These are all major things that can happen, in a home, or the first big rain that comes or snowfall that comes, and all of a sudden your roof is leaking. I mean, why would I want to do that to somebody like that? I think, and most of the guys who are in my sphere, they're looking for doing quality work so that people get a good home at a good, affordable price. Houses aren't cheap anymore. There is, plenty of opportunity to make profit if we purchase the homes for what they're, really worth. That's why we talk a lot about knowing our numbers. But I think it's important to help build good communities, be a deep dive, remodeler when you're rehabbing these properties for people, and provide them with a quality product to move in, to live in, to raise their families in, and have a good home that's not going to be a money pit. For those of you who've ever watched the movie Tom Hanks did called The Money Pit, if you haven't watched it, it's really kind of funny, but I really don't wish that upon anybody. I want people to have great homes. So my final thought is take some integrity in the industry that we're in and help build this industry into one that people have a little bit more trust in because we're doing quality work. And be the guy that goes, oh yeah, I know who remodeled that house. I wouldn't mind buying that house because I know that it was done right. So those are my final thoughts. Going to kind of think with the end in mind. What are you delivering? Who you're delivering it, and what do you want to provide to them? And what would you be willing to stand behind? And I want to thank you for joining me on this episode of the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast. I invite you to subscribe today and be part of our growing community. Hey, and check out our growing list of previous episodes about other real estate investing topics. You can always find the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, iHeart Podcasts, YouTube, or wherever you enjoy listening to podcasts. This is Scott Whitwam. Be sure to join me on our next episode of the Whitwam Wealth Real Estate Podcast, where we're wealth building through real estate.